can work in death-defying heat and not have the right to a water break. That is how many are reading the impact of the latest bill signed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis late last week. Moreover, the bill takes another swipe at workers in the bill by forbidding local government from imposing minimum wage requirements on contractors. In a statement, Bill Harrell, Florida director of the National Federation of Independent Business, said, quote, "The new law would help create a stable environment where owners can grow their businesses." Harrell added, small business owners don't have the time or the resources to navigate a confusing or contradictory array of local ordinances that go beyond the state's already mandates. Per CBS, Miami-Dade, an activist group representing South Florida outdoor workers, criticized the bill and estimated that more than 325,000 workers in the county will be deprived of government protection from heat and sun. Now, this bill was provoked when the second farm worker last year, named Lopez Garcia, who was 29 years old, died on the job from heat stroke. And this pushback from Republicans and the fact that it was signed into law by Ron DeSantis does seem to fall into a pattern of particularly kind of harsh on worker legislative attempts that are coming from the right that seem to go above and beyond basically just saying, I'm going to preserve a status quo. I don't want there to be a higher minimum wage. I don't want there to be additional protections, to saying if a local government decides that they want to protect people in these various ways in a direct response to a real tragedy, the deaths of farm workers that have been occurring due to exposure to heat and the elements, we are going to preclude them on a state level from having that local governance.
Yeah, look, I frankly think the optics of it don't look terrific. It is, as you said, a state government interfering in a more local issue, which is not good. Obviously, people passing out or suffering some consequence or dying on the job because they're working in the sun is a very sympathetic cause, and I think most reasonable people want or think that there should be protections, water breaks, those kinds of things in the workplace for people who work outdoors. I mean, that said, DeSantis's thinking here is the businesses have the right to employ people under whatever circumstances they want, and if you don't like it, you don't have to work for that company, and that's ultimately the check there, and not that the government should second guess the company and tell them under what circumstances they can employ people.
Yeah, I'm really glad you emphasized the company there because it really does feel as though increasingly politicians on both sides of the aisle see companies and their lobbyists as their primary constituents and not the laborers who are subjected to the company's draconian policies. So reportedly, this is from the Miami Herald, even before the bill was drafted last November, lobbyists from the politically powerful real estate and agricultural industries successfully had already watered it down. This is really an effort that is led by those companies that would have an obligation to not make their workers work so hard and in such hot and increasingly hot, given global warming conditions, that they are likely to suffer heat stroke, and even if they don't die, can be really seriously damaged and made very ill. So why do we live in a country, and this is a rhetorical question obviously, but why do we live in a country where thousands and thousands of farm workers have less of a political say in a matter like this than a handful of very wealthy and well-connected lobbyists?
Well, I mean, they have the say over whether those, right, you don't have to work for that company if you want to, and they say it's under these circumstances and we're going to pay you to do that, and it's not, it's their company and it's their policies.
Well, that attitude and the truth behind that statement is exactly why unions are so important, because as you could probably suspect, and what you probably deduce, is that people who are engaging in farm labor, which is a very, very difficult and at times deadly job, aren't doing so because they have a plethora of other professional options at their disposal. These are people who are economically disenfranchised. These are people who don't have a lot of personal or political power. So their power does come from acting as a group and being able to say, our votes are enough to get you out of office, to control the outcome of an election. And if we stand together within our employment context, we have the ability to basically shut down the workforce, withhold our labor, and get you to finally give us the bare minimum that we need to do this work and survive. But so many of these industries, especially in these southern countries, struggle to unionize precisely because these same corporate interests that are lobbying against, say, allowing a break or raising a minimum wage or providing water to their employees also lobby against worker protection. These are right-to-work states. These are states that want to have complete and total dominion over what workers are able to agitate for themselves and for their families. And I think this is the outcome of this. By the way, this is Florida, and I know that there are some people who might be watching this saying it's a red state, this is kind of what they get. But remember, at the same time that Florida voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, they voted even more overwhelmingly for a $15 minimum wage. A $15 minimum wage was more popular than either Donald Trump or Joe Biden in the 2020 election. So what does that tell you about, again, the relationship between what people want, not just in Florida, but across the country, and the unwillingness of Congress to actually accede to their demands?
Yeah, I mean, you point to that example a lot. It does not surprise me that it might be popular. I think it is a bad policy, and I would not want a legislature or a Congress or whoever to implement it. But if people want it, they can fight for it, and they can agitate for more pay at work and for farm labor or whatever it is. That's fine with me. I think people should have the right not to join a union if they don't want to, but they can join one if they want to, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's particularly galling about this story, I mean, the optics of it are off the charts, but this is part and parcel, as I alluded to earlier, of a trend. Republicans have been going after, for example, child labor laws across the country. They've been trying in the last year to cut school lunch funding. I mean, the kind of things that I think even a lot of just family values-oriented conservatives say, these are good things. These are things that I've relied on when we were struggling financially. I was so happy that my kid could get at least one square meal a day. This is the kind of bedrock social program, social safety net program that a government should be providing for. And it does seem like Republicans have managed to get away with attacking things that in past years I would have thought, well, the optics are so bad on this, they're going to let it go. The same way that they will covertly but not overtly usually go after Social Security. There does seem to have been a shift where there is a perception that they can act with impunity in these ways. Democrats tried to veto this bill, obviously unsuccessfully. DeSantis is happy to go ahead and sign it and really literally put his name on it, despite just, again, really terrible optics. So how is this able to happen? Is it just that the media is so distracted, focused on other kinds of things, disinterested in these basic bedrock economic domestic policy issues, that they know they can get away with it because no one's really going to report on it, and nobody outside of the local paper is really going to care about what Ron DeSantis does on this? They're only caring about what Ron DeSantis says about DEI or whatever else?
I mean, I don't know. There's a constituency for making the economic climate of a state more business friendly, not second guessing the choice businesses make. That's how you create a functioning and vibrant economy according to Republican and conservative economic views. And so that people will reward you in the ballot box for saying that there should be less regulation and less, again, second guessing of how businesses are run and less interference from a government body, and that actually a lot of people end up appreciating that because that's what causes a good and healthy economy.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, when you're looking at a 29-year-old dying in the wealthiest country in the world from heat stroke, and that the response to that is to say, we are going to preclude any local ordinances that would allow you to give him water on a break. I mean, it almost reminds me of, remember the law against passing out water to people standing in line at polling places. Mm-hmm. At what point is this stuff going to start getting framed as anti-democratic, anti-worker, anti-humanistic on some basic level that will provoke the sort of outrage that you do see around some of these cultural and social issues on both sides of the aisle? I do worry. There's reporting obviously out in Semaphore over the last day or so about independent outlets like The Intercept facing failure because of financial trouble. And I do, we debate the state of media on the show a lot, but I do sometimes wonder if things like this are fundamentally able to happen because there's just so few local resources that are able to be dedicated to these kind of stories, and because the appetite for national media is so far from what this kind of stuff is about. And when you have this disconnect between voters who are saying, my life is better was better 4 years ago than it is today, and that's why I'm voting for Donald Trump, and that's why I'm so frustrated with Joe Biden. And Democrats are wringing their hands saying, but look at all of these economic metrics. This isn't true. Well, should they be paying more attention to some of these kinds of laws that have gone into effect on the ground that have a direct impact on people's ability not just to live their lives, but to survive their jobs?
Well, we'll continue to monitor that. That does it for today on our show. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. For those of you who like to listen while you're on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Bye-bye.
Take care.